Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission meeting for May 26th. And before we get started, just a couple of notes for folks in the audience. If you wish to speak tonight, we ask that you fill out a card that's in the back of the seats and bring it up to staff on your left, my right. That includes if you're an applicant. We ask that everyone fill out a card so we know who's going to speak on which item. Also, if you have a cell phone, we ask that you put it on silent at this time to respect others in the meeting. And finally, just by way of who we are, the Planning Commission is a group of volunteers that is appointed by the town council in town to make land use decisions based on existing policies and ordinances. And we appreciate everyone coming tonight and those watching on KCAT. So can we start with a roll call?
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Erickson.
Here.
Commissioner Jensen.
Here.
Commissioner Machichi.
Here.
Commissioner Talasfor.
Here.
Commissioner Sayoc.
Here.
And Chair Bourgeois.
Here. Thank you. We have a full house. And would everyone please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on tonight's agenda, we have a set of minutes from our May 12th meeting. Does anyone have any comments, changes, or a motion of approval? Commissioner Erickson.
I will move adoption of the minutes from the May 12th meeting as distributed in the staff report.
Seconded by Commissioner O'Donnell. Any comments or changes from the other commissioners? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Next item is written communications. I don't see any desk items tonight.
We have none.
Great. And I also see we have no requested continuances. So that brings us to our subcommittee reports. I believe there have been a couple of meetings since our last Planning Commission meeting. Commissioner Machichi?
We met today, in fact, on the Historical Preservation Committee. What is that again? Me? Oh, put that away.
Yeah, please check your cell phones. We interfere with the mics. Thanks.
Excuse me. In any event, we had probably the largest agenda I've had on the historical since I've been here. We had 6 items on it this time. They were rather routine. On Tate Avenue, it was a accessory building that they hadn't made modifications to that was passed. On Johnson Avenue, they were changing some molding and so forth. Because of mold and so forth, they were changing the siding, which was passed. The third one we had was an interesting one was the 115 Santa Cruz Avenue. The old Chat House restaurant is another restaurant is coming into it. They didn't make any modifications to the basic part of the building. However, they did make some serious modifications to the back of it to put in a new kitchen, and we're having them come back to review what they did. It wasn't totally to the liking of the historical group today. So we'll probably hold a special meeting next week in order to address that as well. 47 Bayview, which is that one that sits back on Bayview. I don't know if you're familiar with that house. It's got a large front setback onto it. The changing the porch configuration because the fence was rotting out. They're doing a nice job on that. It's going to look real good. The 5th and 6th item were both on the moving of the Fiesta way home. Okay, which was kind of confusing to us because they established 3 criteria the meeting before last, where we had 5 or 6 applicants come up, and we chose 3 in ranking, 1, 2, 3. The top one that was chosen submitted an application. 2 and 3 backed out of it. So we thought it was over, but a new one came in tonight, and they asked us to decide again, and we were split 2-2 on the preference on it. And that's my report.
Yeah, could you tell us where the second location was, and then
University Avenue.
University Avenue?
Yeah.
And so how is that going to be resolved between the?
It's going to be resolved by council, not by us.
Okay.
They had asked us to rule on whether they met the criteria. Both of them met the criteria, which were 3 items. And then they asked for a preference, and two of us voted a preference on Los Gatos Boulevard. The self-development, with the
Thrash House.
is, because putting it next to that really looked gorgeous. I mean, he had a drawing on it and everything. And I think Charles and I went with that one, and then the other two went with the one on University. So,
Okay, great. Commissioner Jensen, you had a question?
Well, I had a question with the number 1 that was answered. And my other question, I don't know if anyone can answer it, but let's imagine that the Thrash House location is the winner, for lack of a better term. I assume that means the plan development there needs to be reopened and rewritten.
they
So
put
there would be a brand-new hearing on that entire plan development? Is that correct?
What the developer would be asking for is a amendment to the PD, not,
PD.
yeah, to the
Will that-
existing PD
Will that
to,
be publicly noticed?
oh, absolutely,
And
yes.
will that come before the planning commission or the town council or both?
Actually, both, because the proposal would be to relocate the below market price units off-site and replace them with the Fiesta House. So it would be a PD amendment that would come to both the planning
It's going to
commission.
go from 19 to 18 units.
Um,
The two BMPs would be offset.
One more question. If this were to come to pass and he wants to reopen the plan development for a quote amendment unquote, would I be correct in assuming that that reopens the consideration of the entire plan development?
Not necessarily, because the permits that were approved, I think, are already have been initiated. In other words, he's already pursuing development of that.
I'm well aware of that, but the question is, once you reopen the plan development for a particular purpose, doesn't it reopen it for all purposes?
It can if it hasn't not been inaugurated, but because the permit's been actually put into play, it's being developed, there would be some rights that would be considered vested rights, and they would attach to allow the development to continue. But you would have the ability to evaluate whether changes had to be made to the program because of this request, and you can condition the request on change the program if they want to do it.
Okay.
But they'd be free to walk out and say, then I don't want to do it.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Talasfor?
I just had a question, Commissioner Machici, and that is about the chart house, the Coggeshall Mansion. Would the remodel or the renovation to the kitchen, does that affect the outside?
Not the front of it, the back of it.
The back, but the outside nonetheless,
See how-
in the
what's
back. So that's why
it
you would be
affects
looking at it.
The part that was added on to the original home.
Okay,
There were portions added on
okay,
to the original home, it affects that portion.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I just thought I would mention that we had the last meeting of the General Plan Advisory Committee, and that was only to clean up a couple of matters. The meeting was brief. The committee members, particularly those who were not of the Town Council and the Planning Commission, were thanked for all of their input, which was substantial. And the general plan will now find its way, I guess, to this commission and ultimately to the Town Council.
Great, thank you. And I think we'd all like to reiterate that thanks to the volunteers in town who stepped up and took part in the General Plan Advisory Committee to do that journeyman's work. Any other subcommittee reports? Okay, great, seeing none. So we've come to the part of our meeting where called verbal communications, where any member of the public can address the commission on any item not on tonight's agenda. So I have no speaker cards, so unless someone lets me know that they wish to speak under verbal communications, I will move on. That brings us to our consent calendar. Item number 1 is 14881 National Avenue and 14830 Los Gatos Boulevard. It is on consent because they are requesting a time approval, a time extension with no changes to the project. Does any member of the public or the commission wish to pull this off of our consent calendar? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Commissioner O'Donnell moves to approve the consent calendar, seconded by Commissioner Talasfor. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 7-0. We have no continued public hearings, and that brings us to our new public hearing, item number 2 tonight, which is 223 to 227 West Main Street, a subdivision application, a variance application, and a conditional use permit.
Thank you,
Now we have a
Mr.
staff
Chair.
report.
Thank you. Town Planner Jennifer Savage will be presenting tonight.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. The project site is located on the south side of West Main Street, approximately 240 feet northwest of North Santa Cruz Avenue. Commercial uses are located to the west and the east. There's a public parking lot located to the north and residential uses located to the south. The applicant is requesting approval to convert the existing mixed-use commercial building of 4 commercial spaces on the first floor and 4 apartments on the second floor into 4 commercial and 4 residential condominiums. No other changes are proposed to the building. The project consists of 3 permits: a subdivision, a conditional use permit, and a variance application. The subdivision application is required to divide the existing structure into the 8 condominiums. The CUP is required to establish the residential condominium use in the C2 zoning district, and the variance is required for the request to reduce the amount of required recreational open space for residential condominiums. The project met the recreational open space requirements for multifamily dwellings or apartments when the project was approved in April of 1998. The requirements for apartments differ from those recreational open space requirements for residential condominiums. The project was originally approved with 832 square feet of recreational open space in the form of balconies and open space located in the southwest corner of the property. The staff report stated that open space was in the northwest, but it's actually the southwest corner of the property. The project met the required square footage for open space for apartments when it was approved. Town code specifies recreational open space standards for residential condominiums, and it consists of 2 types: the private open space and the community recreation space. For private open space, each above-ground unit shall have 120 square feet of outdoor private open space in the form of a balcony. All of the subject residential units are located above the first floor and are considered above-ground units. 2 of the 4 residential units have a balcony of only 113 square feet, which is 7 square feet less than the required 120 square feet. These balconies are located at the rear of the structure. Modification to those 2 balconies that have less than 120 square feet to meet that private open space requirement appears feasible with only minimal impact to the tenants of the existing structure. For community recreation space, the second type of open space, at least 100 square feet for each unit must be provided. This area is in addition to that required for setbacks. The Commission should determine whether the location and the amount of proposed community recreation space and facilities, if applicable, are appropriate for the anticipated residents of the project. The project proposes 295 square feet of community recreation space, and it is within the required 20-foot rear setback. Staff supports that area to contribute towards the total required community recreation space. However, the project should meet the remaining community recreation space requirement elsewhere on the property as required by town code. This may be accomplished by removing and/or reconfiguring the parking spaces on site to provide that community recreation space. It should be noted that if the Commission finds merit to approve the requested variance, the required findings for the variance must be made. The applicant provides a list of special circumstances in their letter of justification that they believe would allow for these findings to be made. In the letter, the applicant references the condominiums at 7 Montebello Way above Le Boulanger, excuse me if I pronounced that incorrectly, as an example of condominiums that exist without the required recreational open space. These units were approved by Town Council in July of 1991. The Town Council waived the open space requirement that was allowed through an urgency ordinance, 1800, which was adopted as a result of the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. The town granted many exceptions after that earthquake in order to provide for quick repair, restoration, and reconstruction of the town. Staff does not support the granting of the variance for 2 reasons. First, it appears that the project can be modified to meet the recreational open space requirement. Second, a variance would constitute a grant of special privileges inconsistent with the limitations upon other properties under the same zoning requirements and we do not believe that the required findings can be made to grant the variance. The Commission should consider if the proposed outdoor space is sufficient for the intended residence. It should also be noted that approving this variance could set a precedence. Over the years, the town has received multiple inquiries to convert multiple family dwellings into condominiums. Staff has directed those inquiries to the town code section in regards to the recreational open space for residential condominiums. The majority of those inquiries could not meet the open space requirements. Staff does recommend approval of the subdivision and the CUP based on the fact that the basic uses of the property will not change and subject to the condition of approval that the project meets both types of the required recreational open space. This concludes staff presentation, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Do we have any questions of staff at this time? Commissioner Telesfor.
Just to clarify for me, if there was to be a modification to the balcony, there was not a drawing of that. Would that have to come back to Planning Commission or not?
No, it would not.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the town attorney wanted to make a comment.
It's just in the chance that maybe some members of the commission have never seen a variance before. Of all the things you decide, you have a lot of discretion. With variances, it's probably the one area of the law that is governed also by state law, and it's very strictly construed. And it is considered to be a constitutional relief valve, meaning that you cannot even get a reasonable use of your land. You're going to be denied benefits others have been granted, and you won't get any special privilege or set any precedent by the approval of variance. So it's very strictly construed against the minimum standards of the zoning ordinance. And I have had the opportunity to talk to the applicants about that. They understand that. And there's two different issues, and as to the second one, I think the common open space, I think they have an argument that may remove the need for variance, but that'll be what you'll be wrestling with this evening. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple quick questions. One, so staff supports the use of that southwest corner toward the community recreational open space. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But the town code also requires that same amount of space elsewhere on the property outside of the setbacks.
Outside of the setbacks. Okay, and that's where the reconfiguration of the parking lot would come in to try and accommodate that?
Correct.
Okay, and that's in addition to them having to increase the size of those two balconies?
Correct.
Okay. And then finally, I know during the Bayview Apartments condo conversion, there was a lot of discussion about what to do with existing residents and having some sort of priority or some sort of transition plan. Was that something that was ever talked about with this applicant? Or is that an issue here?
It was not discussed with this applicant. You are correct. It was discussed during the review of Bay Tree. It's not currently part of the draft housing element to have condominium conversion requirements.
Okay, great.
And I just wanted to comment that I believe the Bayview was focused on special circumstance seniors rather than all tenants in the apartment. It was focused on just ensuring that there was some additional provisions for special circumstances seniors.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions, staff at this time will bring the applicant forward. I have a card for Jason Farwell. And we were having some issues with the timer. Are those fixed? Okay. If not, your time will be, Wendy will be keeping your time. So she'll give you a 1-minute warning, and you have 5 minutes.
I got 5 minutes. Okay,
Yes,
great.
thanks.
Thank you so much. I'm Jason Farwell. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to speak to you, commissioners. The town attorney is correct. We did have a brief conversation regarding our request for a variance on the private deck space, and we're willing to put that aside and waive it and actually pull that off of our application. We will make the necessary changes to those decks. That being said, we do have some issues regarding the community community space requirement. And as I see it, and I may see it differently than the town does, but as it currently stands, when we went through the application process to build this building, we were required to have, I think, 200 square feet of recreational open space, which includes both private decks and other open space on the property. As you make a conversion, a condo conversion, there's a community space requirement that is not subject to outdoor space. It can be interior space as well. Take, for example, a weight room or something like that at a large complex. This is not a large complex. I'm not suggesting that we have a weight room or a space to convert into a weight room. But the argument that I would like to make is the fact that we do have that 290 square feet of open community space in the rear of the property. We also do have a fair amount of common area space within the building that we would like you folks to consider as community space. As a kind of a separate argument, we also would like to make note that there is a rather large town park within, 100 feet, 200 feet of our property, just on the other side of Linden Plaza, that would certainly be available to the residents at the property. So that's really our angle here. We're looking for some cooperation with you folks to get this community space requirement satisfied. We will make the changes to the private decks, those two rear decks, to get them up to the 120 square feet, and then move forward with our project. As far as communicating with the tenants, it's a great point. We've been very, very open with our residential tenants about what we're doing, how we're doing it. In fact, a number of we only have 4, but a couple of them have expressed interest in actually purchasing the unit. We are totally open to that. We welcome that opportunity, and we really are, excited to just offer some units to some folks, whether they be current residents or people from out of Los Gatos, to come in here and be a part of our community.
Okay, you have plenty of time. Is that all your comments?
I really don't have a whole lot more to...
Okay, well, I'm sure the commission will have some questions for you. So,
I welcome it. Thanks.
Commissioner O'Donnell, I think I saw your hand.
There was a suggestion by staff that you might be able to do something with the parking, and I realize you'd rather not do that. But have you explored the suggestion of the staff, and if you have, could you describe to us what you understand that would be?
Yeah, I really didn't have a good handle on that issue until I read the staff report that I got in the mail the other day. So it was very recent that I received that recommendation. Clearly, we would like to avoid that just because of the value inherent in parking in this town. It's very difficult to come by parking and to kind of pull parking spaces out that are used both by our office tenants and our residential tenants. Doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me, but in the end, we're committed to this project, and we're going to do what we need to do to make it work. So, and I don't know what the cost would be associated with pulling those parking spaces out and how we would reconfigure that. I don't know if there's some fire issues as far as radius turns in that back parking lot or what have you, but it just opens up, Pandora's box. But we'd be happy to address it. Thanks.
Commissioner Erickson?
Thank you for your presentation and your comments so far. The indoor space, the indoor common space that you were talking about, is it space then independent of the lobby to the building and the hallways to the building? Because it's from the drawings, it's not apparent to me that there is other common space than the lobby and the circulation space in the building.
Great question, and the answer is no. It is in fact the lobby area and the common hallway area. It's a pretty small building, so I think that area in particular, the initial lobby area on the ground floor, and then the stairwell and the common hall for the apartments, and then the rear stairwell, I think amounts to something close to 600 square feet.
Thank you.
Commissioner Talsford, did you still have a question?
You answered my question. My question was answered. Thank you.
Great. Do we have any other questions? I'd like to ask you, do you have some sort of transition plan for existing residents? I mean, are they going to remain there? Can they remain until you sell them, or, I mean, what would be the plan?
Absolutely. I think I would defer to town council on this, but there are very strict guidelines via California law as to how you need to proceed with existing tenants when you go through a conversion process, and we would certainly comply with those. But at the same time, we've had discussions with those current tenants, and if they would like to stay and purchase those units, we are open to that as well. So I'll say this on the record, we are not in the business of forcing anybody out of our units. We much appreciate our tenants, and we're going to work with them however we need to in order to make this work. So.
Great, thank you. I have no speaker cards. If anyone wishes to speak on this item, now's the time. If not, I'll give you a chance to make some closing remarks, and then we'll start commission deliberation.
Well, I'll make my closing remarks very brief. I would again, just ask you to really consider the community space issue. Both alternatives, I think, provide you with some options, and I think they're both two legitimate options. One being, including that common area space as part of the community space, and the other alternative being the use of the proximity of the town plaza. And I understand that there's always the concern of setting a precedent, but I really feel that this is a very unique building. You're not going to find very many buildings of this type, this mixed use, and this number of units seeking a condo conversion. Most of the condo conversion requests you're going to have are, the large, very large apartment complexes. So I think there's a way to differentiate this project from other projects.
Great, thank you, Mr. Farwell.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I will close the public comment portion of the hearing, and I will turn it over to the commission for questions of staff, comments, or motion. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just some comments. I appreciate the candid remarks. They seemed to me to be honest and straightforward. On the other hand, I find that space already somewhat tight. It's a nice project, so I don't mean this as critically as perhaps it will sound, but there's a lot of asphalt there. Whoever built this initially, and I don't know the state of the law at that time, but obviously when you design apartments, you can plan the eventuality of conversion. And if you do, you plan it accordingly. Sometimes people don't do that. Now, I don't know that we're in the business of trying too hard to cut back on something that, had it come in as a condominium project, would not have been approved as it was done. Secondly, the town attorney has suggested to us that this is a very strict construction, and it's very difficult for me, notwithstanding my sympathy here, but it's very difficult for me to find that uniqueness, that unfairness, which would justify a variance here. So I would have no trouble with the subdivision application, the conditional use permit application, but I would have a real problem with the variance application.
Since no one else is jumping up to speak, would you consider putting that into a motion?
I would. If no one else wants to speak. If I could find my glasses, it would be easier.
While you're looking for those, I would like to concur with those statements. I find it hard to think of that small area behind the dumpsters as community recreation space to begin with, and I know this is not something we proposed, but to be sympathetic to the project, I agree that if I were living there, I'm sure the people use the town plaza as their community open space. It's so close, and that's such a great amenity for a project like that. But I do think we're going to be having more mixed-use developments come in, especially on the boulevard, so I think we need to proceed as Commissioner O'Donnell suggested. So.
All right. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Jensen.
I just wanted to echo that and indicate that while I think the condo conversion is acceptable and the CUP is acceptable, I don't think that based on what's been presented or in our staff report that we could make the finding that's required for the variance, which is generally in topographical and lot kinds of things where your land is unique in some way. What you've described is we have a building, we want to convert it, and essentially it would be inconvenient for us to follow the rules that are set out for condos. So I couldn't intellectually say, based on anything that we've heard, that we could make the findings that's required for the variance. So I think that if you want the benefit of the conversion, you have to bear the cost of what's required for that.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and try to make the motion. Since we're really
Commissioner O'Donnell, sorry.
That's all right.
Staff would like to add something before you proceed with your motion.
The applicant mentioned that they were looking to do community open space in the interior of the building, and I just wanted to point to two definitions within our town code. One is the open space definition, which means an area of land open and unobstructed from the ground to the sky. And then also to recreational open space, which is an area of land set aside for recreational purposes, both active and passive, and intended to a park-like atmosphere. So just to take that into consideration with the applicant's proposal for community open space.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Savage.
All right, I'm going to make a motion. However, the motion is going to be in parts because the first part of my motion would be that we find that the project is categorically exempt under Section 15301 of the environmental guidelines because there is no physical change being proposed. Secondly, apparently we have to find that the redevelopment plan is consistent with the redevelopment plan, and it the use falls under the general commercial uses described in the town's general plan. And so my motion would include that. Third, and I'm going to do the conditional use permit first, that the proposed use is desirable for the public convenience and our welfare, and will continue to contribute to the town's housing stock, and the use will continue the mixed use of the development. The proposed uses will not impair the integrity and character of the zone. The proposed uses would not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or general welfare, and the proposed uses of the property are in harmony with the various elements and objectives of the general plan, the purpose of the town code. On the issue of the variance, my motion would be that we deny that variance, finding no facts which would justify a variance under Section 29-20 -170 of the town code, i.e. there are no special circumstances applicable to the property as therein defined, and that the granting of the variance would constitute a special privilege as opposed to not constituting it. And then finally, since we're approving the subdivision, I would simply say that Section 66-474 of the State Subdivision Map Act requires essentially a negative finding under A through G as set forth in the staff report, which I could not find, and therefore the subdivision should be approved. So that would be the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Dahl. So basically we have a motion that mimics the staff recommendations, and in essence it is for approval of the subdivision application, approval of the conditional use permit, and denial of the variance application. Do I have a second? Commissioner Jensen.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Does anyone wish to make a comment on the motion at this point?
I have a question.
Commissioner Dahl.
If we assume the applicant, as the applicant expressed, a desire to really see this thing through, I guess the one question I have is that would suggest to me that he will want to explore the concept of this parking use to turn it into open space. So I guess the real question is, notwithstanding my having made that motion, whether the motion is premature, whether it would be advantageous to the applicant to allow a continuance for him to modify his application as opposed to simply denying it. And that's a question, so.
Well, actually, what your motion on the floor would approve is approve the projects as proposed and conditioned by staff, which would require, in order if he wants to move forward, to reconfigure the parking lot into open space. So that's part of your motion.
Which would potentially require an Arkansas site application?
I think it would be something that would be done at the DRC, though, DRC level. However, I just want to address Commissioner O'Donnell's point that maybe that is a better way to go, is to continue this if the applicant's in agreement to that, to make that modification. We can just condition it, and then that can be corrected through DRC, but possibly they want to make that change. It would delay, absolutely. It would delay it actually until July.
But that would mean that it would come back to the commission would get to see what that configuration looked
Right.
like, as opposed to...
In that case, if you were to continue it, yes,
If we didn't, then it would be approved at the DRC.
correct.
Okay. Any comments on that suggestion?
I don't have a problem with the DRC here, but I certainly would yield to my fellow commissioners.
Well, we have a motion on the floor, and I think we understand what that means at this point. So let's just take a vote, and if people don't like it, they will not vote for it. So I'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor for the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes 7-0. So thank you. Are there appeal rights?
This actually goes to the city council, or town council, excuse me, because it is a subdivision map, and so there would not be appeal rights at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that's the only new public hearing we had tonight. We have no continued other business, and that brings us to new other business. I'm going to jump to commission matters first. Does anyone on the commission have something they'd like to bring up? Do we have director matters?
Actually, if I could digress a moment, the applicant or any aggrieved party could appeal the denial of the variance to the town council, because that action stops at the planning commission, as well as the conditional use permit, but of course that was approved. And they have 10 days in which to file that appeal.
Great.
So
Thank
just
you.
to make sure everybody understands that, this will naturally go to the council without the variance unless you file an appeal within 10 days of the variance.
And so the last thing we have is a report from the Director of Community
We
Development.
do. Thank you. I actually have 2 items tonight. First one's a brief one, second one's a little bit longer. The first one, we've been having fairly light planning commission agendas. It's not even 8 o'clock yet. So we thought that I did hear from, I think, the last planning commission meeting that the planning commission would like to start considering maybe looking at other issues that have been under debate with the planning commission, maybe the council. I think community benefit was one, and we would like to get to that. However, those things do require a lot of staff time to put together something that's substantive for the planning commission to consider. And at this point in time, due to the general plan workload, we're really trying to delay more substantive work items until then. However, we do have a new concept that we want to bring to you that we are pretty excited about. I don't know if probably most of the planning commissioners have watched the town council meetings, and they have a new segment called Did You Know? And it's highlighting town services and different things the town does. Well, we'd like to start a version of that with the Planning Commission. And on those evenings that we know it's a light agenda, we'd like to bring forward information on economic vitality, what's happening out in the community, just so the Planning Commission has kind of a broader perspective of what that development environment's like, what are the challenges out there, the opportunities out there. So we were hoping to kick that off. We might even be able to kick that off at the first meeting in July. It's not that heavy of an agenda. So we hope that you'll enjoy this new kind of an informational segment that we'd like to introduce. And on to the longer item, we have some busy meetings coming up at the end of June, as the Planning Commission's well aware of. I'm really excited to announce that we are on the home stretch with the general plan. It's been a long road, and as this commission's discussed, the GPAC has done some considerable work, as well as the GPC, in seeing this document to fruition. But there's a couple of big steps ahead of us, Planning Commission review and the Town Council review. As the Commission is aware, we do have June 23rd and June 30th slated for Planning Commission review, and staff, Chair Bourgeois, our town manager, and our consultants, DC&E, have discussed strategies for ensuring that we provide an efficient and effective review of that for the Planning Commission. It's a lot of information to try to digest in just 2 separate meetings. So what is our best approach that we have come up with is to format June 23rd in a study session format. We would suggest that you take public comments at the beginning of the meeting so that you can make sure you get that in, and then the bulk of the 23rd will be spent, and we don't have any other projects on the 23rd, so the bulk will be spent reviewing red line versions of the 4 focus area elements, and that would be environment and sustainability, human services, which has the youth and senior components, conservation, and the parks open space element. So we would review the red line copy, and that would have the goals, policies, and action items. And you'll be able to see what the GPAC is recommending, because it's basically the red line copy is the public draft we released on March 10th with the GPAC's comments, edits. And then on the 30th, we would hopefully be able to, because we are starting at 6 and we do not have any other items that night, we'd hopefully be able to get through the entire 4 focus areas that night. I think we'll come really close if we don't. I suspect that we really will get through that. We will roll then into the 30th meeting, which will be a public hearing format. And on the 30th, that would be the opportunity for Planning Commission. If we'll wrap up anything we haven't finished on the 23rd, and then be an opportunity for Planning Commission to talk about and discuss any non-focus area general plan items or EIR items. So that'd be kind of that open session. We'll also have the table that has all the deleted policies, actions, and goals. And then we'll also we have the board and commission comments, and we have public comments. And we're creating, in fact, I saw the first draft today, a comment matrix that will help you understand all the comments that have come through. The comment matrix basically will list the comment, if there's any relevant staff recommendation relative to that. And then ultimately, there's a third column there that will be the Planning Commission's thoughts on that, and that'll all be then packaged up and sent off to the Town Council in August when they review it. So what we're suggesting, that the consultants are, and then we'll hold all public comments other than those ones that would be given at the beginning of the 23rd. The reason we thought it was important to have some public comments on the 23rd is because some people may not be able to attend both meetings. So on the 30th then, you would open the public hearing and take all public other comments. Those will then be wrapped into that comment matrix again that would be sent on to the council. Hopefully capture every comment out there. So very busy time. Our consultants are working on the red line copy. We're hoping to get that out 2 weeks. So 2 weeks in advance of the meeting, which would be around the 9th, and give you a week longer than you normally get. But we do ask that in between now and then, if you haven't had an opportunity to review the draft general plan that is on our website at www.lgg, it's lggeneralplanupdate.org. Plus, I believe we gave you all a copy in the format you asked for, whether it was a CD or a hard copy. Take a look at those 4 elements and make sure that you are pretty clear on what they're saying and the scope and what they're trying to do. Again, environment, sustainability, my brain stopped, conservation, open space, and parks and recreation, and then human services. And then lastly, we ask that if you have questions, either on those topics or on anything other with the general plan and EIR, if you could get them to us as soon as possible, and we would like to then put the answers in a desk item so that, again, we can try to minimize a lot of discussion and be able to get you all the answers you need, but try to do it in the most effective and efficient manner. So if you could send those comments to either Joel or myself, then we'll make sure that we'll get, if we get them out, if they get to us within a couple of days before the meeting, we can put them into a desk item, and that'll be probably a really good way for us to address those. I did send a memo in February, and I thought I picked it up from the copier, but I don't see it, but I have it back in our offices, that explain to the Planning Commission their roles and responsibilities in regards to general plan review. And I believe I emailed that out to you in February. If you need another copy of that, please let me know. And I did make copies. I just didn't bring them with me, unfortunately, but I can grab them. And lastly, I just wanted to remind you, we are starting at 6 o'clock on both the 23rd and 30th, and we do appreciate that. I know that this is it's a lot of time you're devoting to this, and we really do appreciate it. And I know it's hard for some people to get here, and we'd like to, if you'd like, we can provide dinner that night, because some people will just be coming right from work, and we'll be happy to provide dinner, and you can break away at a break and try to get some dinner. And I think that is all. We do have one other item that may be on the 30th, and so we really will have to be as quick and efficient as we can, because it's an item that we're having difficulty in trying to push off into July. So we'll probably hear that item on the 30th if the plans go as they do now. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Ms. Rooney. Do we have any questions? It's a lot of information. Commissioner Say?
With regard to the EIR specific to the general plan, we reviewed the draft and we took public comments. Is that coming back to us in a final form, or is that wrapped up in the general plan meetings?
It's coming back to you in the final form, and I'm actually right in the middle. Most of today I spent reviewing it. Basically, it will be a fifth chapter. I think it's a fifth chapter to the EIR, and it lists changes that were made to the body of the EIR. It lists, of course, all the comments that were received, and then the response to those comments. And it's put together in a really easy-to-follow process, and so you can get through it rather easily. And that will be part of the documentation. And our due date to have that back to the consultants is June 3rd, so I believe they'll have that back to us. I think that will go out the 9th with your red line copy.
So that gets finalized during the 23rd, 30th meetings?
You're making a recommendation on that also. Okay. You're making a recommendation to certify the EIR.
Okay. And then just a process question. The agenda on the 30th would just be a continuation of the 23rd. So the goal then is that those who spoke on the 23rd, there isn't new material for them to re-speak on or re-comment on the 30th? Is that correct? Or
I would suggest that the Planning Commission continue to take comments. I think that's really important for the public to be able to express their opinions. The way we're structuring it is the comments that would be received on the 23rd would be before your deliberation. You're not deliberating, but before your discussions. And some people may be compelled to be able to make both meetings and want to be able to comment on what you talked about. So I would suggest that you take comments on both, limit the ones on the 23rd, but go ahead and take them as many comments that are out there, even if they spoke before.
And if I could add, our thought behind having the majority of the comments come at the second meeting is the public would then have the benefit of hearing all the discussion and staff reports and everything. There's going to be a lot of information, and I think people will then have a week to go and formulate questions and gather their thoughts a little better, and so that's why we want to do it. But we're not going to deny people the chance to speak twice. But if they can't make the 30th, then we're going to encourage them to speak at the 23rd. So that was the thought behind that. Commissioner Jensen?
My question is, what's the benefit or purpose or thinking behind making the 23rd a study session? Why do that? Since you're going to have two sessions on it and people are going to talk twice, what's the purpose of having a study session?
We looked at kind of from two benefits. Well, one benefit, but we are required to have two meetings on the general plan at both the Planning Commission and the council level. So that dictated the two meetings. If we held a public hearing on both nights, it's a bit awkward. And you then don't have control over how much time you have on the 23rd to work on the substantive parts of the general plan, because you're going to open a public hearing and go through the regular format of a public hearing. So by structuring it, having public comments at the beginning, so we're giving people the opportunity to comment, you'll then have a defined period of time, because the commission's going to tell us how late they want to go. If they want to go to 11 o'clock, then you have theoretically from 6:20, let's say, till 11 o'clock. And so you have a defined period of time that we can try to be as as efficient as possible to get through the documents. So it's really just controlling the time, the Planning Commission's time with this. And then it's somewhat awkward. I guess you could hold a public hearing on the 23rd, take comments, continue it, and then, and then continue the public hearing to the 30th. But because, and we talked with our consultants about this, the law is, it does not state that you have to hold 2 public hearings. It says 2 public meetings. We believe that this makes the most efficient use of the commission's time. And it allows people to speak at both meetings.
Did that answer your question?
It answers my question about the thinking.
Okay. All right, any other questions on this item?
I just wanted to comment that I did bring the memo. So did anybody want to take another copy of that? Okay.
Yeah, I think let's just pass them down.
Yeah, there they are. Okay.
All right, any other items?
That's it. And we're getting out of here before 8 o'clock.
And with that, meeting is